actual theme song.
I have it stripped out.
You're listening to The Voice 17104. Welcome to Did You Know? Podcast with your host, Richard Utley, dedicated to the African American viewers. The program is aimed to celebrate the African American culture and deal with the real and relevant topics that impact the everyday lives of the African American community. Through frank and insightful dialogue with local and national influencers. Every day, there's another horrible, discouraging news story, directly or indirectly, impacting African Americans. But we need to look at the shining star in the galaxy of Black America. It is time to tell our story.
Welcome to another Did You Know? Thank you for joining me this evening. As you know, I've been talking about the importances of voting. So today is National Voter Registration Day. Because you know, November 8th is coming soon. And we need to be prepared to vote because we're in a very critical situation. And I made up my mind that I'm going to keep talking about this until we get there on November 8th. We got to look out for our own vested interests. We got to put people in who are going to look out for us. If they don't look out for us, then we got to kick them to the curb. So I'm going to keep bringing that up. If you haven't registered to vote, then do so. The other thing is, well, you know, it's National Hispanic Heritage Month. It was their month. You know, they give them a month and they give us a month. Even though I think it's very important that history should be taught all the time. Let me give you a little story. A couple of weeks ago, I went out to the college that I went to, the University of Pittsburgh, and they had a group of athletes, a tent for athletes. And so I was talking to a number of athletes there about the history of Pitt and in terms of African American athletes. And after I got done talking to them, it bothered me. It bothered me because they had no history of how far they have come to where we were before. And I said, I'm going to address that tonight. Those of you out there, we need to understand we have a responsibility to tell our young people the trials and tribulations of how they got to where they got to. For example, many of you are Alabama fans. There's nothing wrong with that. You love Alabama. But how long ago before a Black person could even go to the school there or play football there? So I'm going to do a shout out to all you athletes, not only just your athletes, but students who've had trials and tribulations. Maybe we should tell our story to the students that goes to your institution. Maybe they need to understand it wasn't the way it is now. And I think that's part of the problem. I think part of the problem is that they don't know our history. Because as I shared with them some stories when I went there, and they were like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Because they think it's the way it is now. So I hope that some of you out there will start to take the initiative to tell them about their institution, not necessarily about sports, but the institution itself, because all of them have had a legacy that students need to know to understand who fought for them, and that's how they got there. Because sometimes we don't think that. Now, for me, I was a little different. I admit I was a little different. because I was the chairperson of the Black Student Union at the University of Pittsburgh. So I do know there were so many trailblazers before me and so many after me. But if it wouldn't have been for those trailblazers, a lot of you would not be going to that school now. A lot of you wouldn't be playing sports. So I just want to put that in focus to you. I was reading something, a good friend of mine, Hop Kendricks, he writes for the Pittsburgh Courier time to time. And he always has his article called To Tell the Truth. And so I happened to read this article, and he had a title, and it said, "Too many of us are permitting ourselves to be played out of position." And I couldn't understand what he meant by that. And he pretty well said, it's important that I clarify to my readers, I'm meaning headlines of this column. Majority of Blacks are concerned about discussing things about Trump. And a lot of our leaders talk about those kinds of things. And as I continued to read this article, I kind of understood what he was saying. You know, we do a terrible job of talking about our history or institutions in our communities. We don't pay homage to the institutions of whether it been the Urban League or whether it been the NAACP or things of that nature. Also, we fail to discuss things like, yeah, Obama might have been the president of the United States for 8 years, but guess what? Jesse Jackson ran once too. We don't talk about our trailblazers. We don't talk about Medgar Evers. We don't talk about Stokely Carmichael. We don't talk about Nelson Mandela. We don't talk about Adam Clayton Powell. We don't talk about those things. And why? Why is it that we don't talk about those trailblazers that were very important to us? And I think we should. And after I read that, I got concerned. I said, you know what? I'm going to start talking about things and making you guys who listen to this audience to do some history. Look up some things. Because if you don't know nothing, then you have no way of directing things. Now, if I say to you 1906, the Brownsville affair, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So you ought to do the research. Now, what was this 1906 Brownsville affair? It takes place, angry Black soldiers have been subject to racial discriminatory insults. So they snuck into Brownsville, Texas, and a white bartender was wounded. And although the evidence was weak, President Theodore Roosevelt sided with the Brownsville whites and ordered 167 of the Black soldiers dishonorably discharged because they either denied involvement in the shooting or refused to say who was involved. Here's my point. However, 66 years later, after the Army investigated, they finally cleared those soldiers of the dishonorable discharge that they got. These are things that we need to know. I mean, I had opportunity not long ago, Thaddeus Stevens, he was a senator, a congressman from Pennsylvania, lived in Lancaster. He played a very, very major significant role in terms of where we are now. And they even have a Black walk-in tour in Lancaster. We need to do our history, because if we don't do our history, then shame on us. We always let people define our history for us. And, you know, and now this is becoming this whole race thing, and we got to tell our own stories. And if we don't tell our own stories, then who's going to tell them? I looked up, I said, what the studying of history? And I looked up, it says studying history helps us understand and grapple with complex questions and dilemmas by examining how the past has shaped and continues to shape global, national, and local relationships between society and people. You need to know that. The other issue is, before I bring my guest on, is that I get very upset because we don't tell our young people about all the wonderful role models that we have. We don't tell them about blacks that have been astronauts, or the scientists, or the inventors, or the business people, or people who wrote literary stuff. I think that's very important. We need to learn so much about ourselves and our abilities to overcome our challenges. Because we have to look out, instead of looking at basketball players and football players and all of that, we need to tell our young people they can be whatever they want to be, because everybody ain't going to be a football player and everybody ain't going to be a basketball player. But we need to tell them about Black entrepreneurs. We need to tell them about folks that own businesses, ran businesses, and what they had to go through. All the things that we have invented. But if you ask the average young person, what have we invented? I'm not sure if he can tell you anything. So that's what defines us. That defines who we are. So I'm going to bring up every week now when I'm on this program that we need to talk about our history, and you need to look it up, and you need to tell our story. So from now on, I'm going to leave you with a history lesson I'm going to give all of y'all. If you ask the average person in our community, why was there a civil war? I hope they can tell you. I hope they can tell you. What caused the Civil War? There was a reason. You need to know why. You need to know about the South and the North. You need to know about slavery. If I ask people, the Underground Railroad, they should know about the Underground Railroad. If I say Harriet Tubman, they should know. Why should they know? Because it's our history. And all that played a very significant role in who we are today and where we are and why we're in a position to be in many positions. And I think if we do that, I think what it'll do for us, it'll give us a better understanding, but it'll help young people out. It'll help everybody out. Because we got so many people doing so many things. And that's why I have this program. I bring different people on this program because I want them to tell you what they're doing. Because a lot of them out there doing things to help you, and they want to help you. So tonight I have a guest on. I have a young man, and him and I chit-chatted a number of times. And he said, Mr. Utley, this is what I do. And I said, oh, this is what you do. I said, so do you want to come on and tell your story? He said, yes, I do, because I can help people out. And so I said, since you say you can help people out, because that's what it's about, telling our story, sharing information, and maybe something you may learn from him. And if you learn one thing from him, hey, guess what? It was a good program. So tonight, I got my brother on, First Alliance Home Mortgage. Now, first thing you want to know, what's that mean and who he is. So I'm going to have Mr. Davis tell you who he is. Davis, who are you?
Well, thank you for having me, Mr. Utley, and thank you for sharing that history. My name is Jamari Davis. I go by Jay. I've been in lending for the better part of 18 years. Brought my practice, so to speak, out to Harrisburg about 4 years ago. From Baltimore, raised in Lebanon, and I've been working on this Harrisburg area the last 4 years. And my whole goal, my whole premise is to help people achieve the American dream. Home ownership, I think, is a goal for most people, and a lot of people don't know how to attain it, especially a lot of people that look like you and I. So my goal is to kind of show them this is what you need to do. It's not very, it can be simple, yet complicated. And if we don't know what to do, we don't know where to start.
All right, let me ask you this first. I want to get personal with you before I get into your professionalism. What made you what drove you to be who you are today? And I asked you that question because I want my audience to know all of us have a driven factor in us. And it can be very small, but it's a driven factor, but it's all important.
Wonderful, great question. I'm one of 8 kids. Went to college at Penn State, and I just have a passion around numbers, math, finance, and my degrees in marketing and management. And when I was 25, I bought my first home. I realized everyone says first step to wealth is homeownership. Bought a house at 25, had no clue what I was doing, and no one helped me along the path. I ended up getting an adjustable rate mortgage. I mean, I got a very, very bad loan. 2 years, interest rate went from 7% to 12%. I almost lost the house because the payment almost doubled. And at that point, I realized I need to help people so they don't fall in this path. I need to help educate people and show them that there's ways to do it, and it's not as difficult as it seems. But you don't learn it in schools. If your parents never owned a home, you're not gonna learn it from your parents. So where can you go to learn the first step to home ownership? So my goal is just to teach people how to do it and hold their hand through the process.
So what you're saying is your experience is what drove you to look at how the process worked for you. So that's why I bring people on like you, because you can tell your story based on your experience. Now, that should work 2 ways. Hopefully, by bringing them on, some of you won't fall into the same experience.
Correct.
But at the same time, it gives people, hopefully, tonight it'll give people hope, vision, and dreams. Because that's what I want this program to be about. Because I brought so many people on this program, and I've been amazed because they had a vision or something happened that drove them this way or that way. And I think it's important because we need to see the real reality of real life experiences. So, okay, so you owned your first house and they're still pushing those kinds of things, variable mortgages and that. So let me ask you this. What are some of the things that people should do to even before they start want to buy a house?
So to your point earlier, you were talking about what we don't know, we should research. So I think people should they should do some research. If homeownership is a goal, they should do some research. They should ask the right questions and try their best to find the right people. And I think that's the hard part, trying to find the right people. You can go to the bank, and depending on who you talk to, they could dismiss you or they could help you. And depending on the level of knowledge they have, their help could be good or bad. I used to work in the banking, so I've seen it from both sides, from the banking side to the mortgage company side. And on the banking side, I've seen many people walk in and they talk to the wrong loan officer, or they look a certain way, and they're easily dismissed or disqualified right away without really giving them a chance. And what I try to do is, hold a hand through the process and do everything I can to, achieve the ultimate goal, which is, keys at their hand at the closing table. And there's a lot of programs around here. Dauphin County does a great job with the first-time homebuyers program. There's PHFA. So the knowledge is out there if you look for it. The problem is there's not many people that put the pieces together. I can sit through a class and they'll tell you, hey, Mr. Utley, you need a 640 credit score, 2 years of employment. Here's what you need. But there's so many people that aren't there and they don't know how to get there. And, the majority of lenders out here aren't going to take the time to show you and teach you the process. If I can't get you approved, it's a no. I don't believe in doing that. I believe in, if I can't get you approved today, here are the steps so I can get you approved in the future. And not many people do that.
So you're saying that people should do research.
100%.
They should do research to find out, because I run people all the time talking about they want to buy a house. And that's easy to say. So the first thing you're saying, they need to do research to find out what, where they fit.
find out, what the steps look like as far as, I mean, you can, a quick Google search can tell you the ballpark of how much money do I need down, or what kind of programs, are available.
Well, when you say that, and I do understand that, and as you said earlier, there's a lot of programs out there, but they need to do the research. I know there's a lot of programs out there for first-time home buyers, and they need to know that they may need to go through those programs, correct?
Correct.
So if somebody out there thinking about buying a house, you might want to go through some of those programs. The problem is sometimes we just decide, we get on a whim, we drive past, we see this house, and we say we want to buy it, but we don't know the blocks that it takes to get there. So let me ask you this question. Based on history, as far as we getting mortgages or we buying houses, it's not always been a pleasant experience. So since it hasn't been a pleasant experience, historical, that has been proven. It's not something that I just came up with. So what do you tell a person? What's your encouragement for a person to start to develop their dream? Because I'm going to put this out there and then I want you to elaborate. Because everybody knows that property is wealth, and property is associated with wealth. But a lot of times we didn't understand that. So what would be your recommendation for us, to my audience out here, for them to get in the mindset of buying a house, saving up to purchasing a house?
So the first thing I would say is take it serious. I have so many people come to me and say, I want to buy a house. And I'm like, okay, that's wonderful. My qualifying questions start with, credit score and income. Oh, my credit's a 540 and I have $500 in the bank. So yes, I agree. It's been an uphill battle for years for minorities to buy homes. However, I will say we've come very, very far, very far. Does it still happen? Yes, but we've come very far. And the problem, as I see it, is that we're not doing our part. We as Black people, we don't do our part. We say we want a house, but we don't really want a house, because you can't come to me seriously and tell me you want to buy a house and you have zero money saved. There's no budget, there's no discipline. And your credit report is your financial resume. I look at your credit report and I see nothing against people with low credit. I'm just saying 500 credit score. That shows me you've never paid a bill on time. Like, you have a history of not paying people. So now you come to me and you want to borrow $100,000. We'll throw that number out there.
Sure.
You want $100,000 from me to buy a home because you won't really want it, and you've never paid anybody else back. I'm just going to assume you're going to pay me back. So I think we take a step back and realize and learn that there's things that have to take place. First, we have to build our credit score up if it's not high enough, and we have to save some money. Now, granted, there are some programs that are 100% financed, and they're few and far between, unless it's VA or USDA, and that's if you're a vet or you're buying in a rural area. The 100% down the programs are very rare because of the debacle that happened in 08. So you have to have some skin in the game. And I'm telling you, as I sit here today, if I talk to 20 people a week, unfortunately, 15, and I'm talking about Black people, 15 are coming to me saying, I want to buy a house for $200,000 and I have $1,000 in the bank. And it's not anywhere real, it's not realistic.
Well, I, in doing some research and looking at home ownership right now, 2022, it's really only been about 44.7 of African Americans in terms of home ownership. It's lower than what it was before.
Yes.
Now, why is that?
So guidelines have tightened up. So we learned from what happened in '08, and and guidelines have tightened up across the board. So, and I think the number for white was like 75%. And so it's a drastic difference. But I believe it's because guidelines have tightened up and we aren't meeting them, and we aren't, putting the work in order to meet them.
Now you brought up '08. Would you like to tell my audience, because I know what you're talking about, but would you explain to my audience how many of them got houses, got mortgages that they couldn't afford?
Yes.
Also, I'd like for you to elaborate on, because you talked about that balloon mortgage. And would you explain to the audience, because it still happens, how they got to be careful? Because you even admitted you might have been, interest rate might have been 7, but it jumped to 12. That's a whole lot of money that you got to come up with. So would you explain to them what happened back then? Because I have another question I'm gonna ask you after you articulate that whole box.
So back then, it was extremely easy to buy a house. When I say easy, I've had clients come in, and as long as you had a 700 credit score, you didn't have to show pay stubs, tax returns, or any proof of income. So there was a lot of stated loans. There was very little oversight. So as long as you had decent credit, you can buy whatever you want. 2 houses, 3 houses, as long as you signed and said, I made X amount. So there were a lot of risky loans that were made. And then there were a lot of adjustable rates or balloon mortgages, whereas you have a teaser rate, let's call it that. So for the first 2 years, it's a nice low rate, nice low payment. I love it. It looks good. My payment's low, and I'm not really prepared what happens when that rate adjusts. And in my personal experience, mine went from a 7 to a 12. It's crazy. Like the payment doubled. And if you're not ready for that and you're not prepared for that, then you get behind, and then foreclosures happen. So back in '08, we just had the bubble burst, and there were so many mortgages that defaulted, and we had a crash. And after that, there was a lot of regulation put in place so it won't happen again. So guidelines tighten and programs tighten now. They're starting to get a little bit looser, but they're still nothing like they were back before 2008.
So people need to understand, I guess what you're saying, people need to understand what they're getting into is the adjustable or whatever fixed income, blah, blah rates. They need to understand that.
Yes, 100%. And I rarely will give somebody an adjustable rate mortgage. It is for, so let's just say you're in a job and you're moving here for, you're stationed someplace for an amount of time. And you're fiscally responsible, you're savvy, and you know that, listen, I'm only going to be here 3 or 4 years because after that I'm leaving. In a situation like that, it may make sense. But 99% of what I do would be fixed rate mortgages.
Okay. Could you explain to my audience why home ownership creates wealth? I don't think sometimes we understand it. And one of the reasons we probably don't understand it sometimes is because a lot of us never owned houses, or we grew up living in apartments or wherever we lived at. So the mentalness never created home ownership, because most of us, generation to generation, spend, and they never figure out how to acquire wealth. So don't understanding, if you own a house, if you own some property, you get a little bit more respect than when you don't.
So just for conversation's sake,
Sure.
You buy a house for, okay, I use myself as an example. I bought a house for $187,000. Bought a house for $187,000. The market appreciates, houses appreciate. So you get what's called equity. So 5 years later, house is now worth, $300,000. They say I'd say 10 years, it should double. But what happens is you have that 187, every month I'm paying it down. And the market, especially the last 2 years, was booming and going up. So, you do some upgrades to your house, or your neighbors sell their house, and it's worth more and more. So now I have this asset, my house, that's now worth 300,000. I paid it down to 150,000. I have $150,000 worth of equity. That is equity, which you can equate to cash, because I could go to the bank and I could pull that equity out, and then I can go buy another house, or I can buy an investment property, and I can keep, and so on and so forth. So it's a great, owning a home is a great thing. It's an asset, not a liability. And it's going to, in most markets, is going to appreciate. But to Mr. Utley's point, a lot of people don't know this and don't buy homes. And, we as Black people, when we couldn't buy homes and we were redlined and we were in neighborhoods that didn't appreciate as fast, we were kind of behind the 8 ball. But those days are over. Now you can go buy a house. Yes, racial discrimination still happens. However, I am a Black lender in Harrisburg. I'm telling you, if you want to buy a house, I can show you how to do it. It's really that simple.
Now, as I brought on earlier about history, and most people, when you say redlining, they don't have no concept of what you're talking about. And that's why I think it's so important that we understand where we are and where we came from. Because I tell people all the time, certain things that you should know, but you didn't understand. When I had some people on my program and I talked about neighborhoods and neighborhoods of people of color. And I said, well, usually way back, even to this point, we lived in areas that weren't the best. We always lived in neighborhoods by rivers, railroad tracks, industrial areas, and people don't understand why. The reason we lived in them because that's the only place that we could live. That's the only place we could live. But now we can live in a few more places. Now I ain't going that far to say we can go wherever we want to go, because I don't believe that. He's a lender, but he believes that, but I don't. But the point is that anybody out there, if you decide you want to buy something, you got to save up for it. I had Lewis Motley on. I had him on one time, and from the first, and he brought up the fact, same thing you said almost. You don't pay your bills, what makes you think somebody's gonna loan you some money? That's the first thing you look. So you're saying credit is very important. Not only credit's very important, but you're saying they need to save up. Is that what you're not?
That's what I'm saying. Credit is vital. So I do know Mr. Motley, great guy, great small business bankers. So any of my clients that they come in and they want small business lending, I send them Lou's a great guy. When it comes to home ownership, credit is vital. I learned a long time ago how important it was when I didn't have it. So graduated college. In college, they give credit cards out for fun. Sign here, they just give it out. So now I graduate from college. I don't even have a job, but I'm $30,000 in debt. So, kind of started from the bottom. And I realized that schools, institutions, they're not teaching credit. And if your parents aren't versed in it, no one's learning it until it's too late. So I got into the credit realm. I started my own credit repair company in Lebanon about 8 years ago, and I moved that over to Harrisburg 4 years ago. So I own Credit Facts on 3619 Walnut Street. So I have a credit repair company because I wanted to be a one-stop shop. So when clients came to me, I wanted it full circle. So you come to me and I can't help you because your score is at a 520. If you're serious, we can put you through a credit repair program that's going to help you rebuild and give you a second chance. And that's what a lot of us as people don't get. We don't get second chances. So that's kind of why we put the credit repair company in place. But if your credit score with FHA, we can go down to a 580. I don't like to because the rate's going to be on the higher side. But under normal circumstances, we want you at a 620 or 640 credit score. The higher the better. The higher credit score is, the lower your interest rate, which in turn is going to lower your payment. But that credit is vital. So when you have that $300 Capital One credit card and you miss a payment, when I say miss a payment, I mean it's 30 days late, it will drop your credit. Like, I don't think people understand how important credit is. You can have one late payment and drop you 40, 50, 60 points. And, I equate credit to your GPA. It falls down very quick, but it takes a long time to build it back up. But if homeownership is a goal and a dream, we can make it a reality, but you have to do your part. And that's going to be saving some money and taking care of the credit and having 2 years of employment. And I can do the rest.
So you're saying that the most important thing they don't hear, and I've heard it from my other guests, you got to pay your bills.
Have to pay your bills one time.
You got to pay your bills on time. And that's very important.
That's vital. Some people just pay their bills when they want. There's a due date for a reason, and there's a grace period. If for some reason you miss the due date, there is a grace period, but you have to pay it. I mean, come hell or high water, you have to. If not, it will destroy your credit and haunt you for years to come. And credit affects everything from your insurance rate. So from your car insurance, a lot of employers pull your credit. So it's like, it is super, it's more important now than I think it's ever been. And bad credit versus good credit can save you hundreds of dollars a month. So it is vital. You take nothing else from this today. Make sure you take away how important credit is and how important you must pay your bills on time.
Let's talk about credit repair, because I see it on TV all the time, people saying you ought to do that. So explain a little bit about credit repair.
So there's no magic wand. A lot of people think there is. There's no magic wand. So what we do is twofold. One is to take a look at the credit report and try to educate. When it comes to credit, you don't want repeat customers. I want to educate you. Let's talk about what you did wrong. Let's talk about what we need to do moving forward. That's half of. The other half is reaching out to the creditors and having a conversation around the negatives and derogatory information. When it really comes down to it, there's a lot of, your National Recovery, your Bureau of Account Management, these collection agencies, they have one job, and that's to collect money. However, if you talk to the right person, they're willing to work with you and help you. Say, listen, Mr. Utley, I am trying to buy this house, and my loan officer is saying, if this is on here, I can't buy the house. We can negotiate with them and come up with a dollar amount to do what's called a pay delete. And you pay X, which is lower than what you owe, and they remove it like magic, like it's gone. And it's like it's never been there. And so we that's one of our methods. But we use the laws with the Fair Credit Act, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of the companies violate them. So we have a plethora of ways to do it. But again, there's no magic wand. It takes work, it takes time, usually 3 to 6 months. But as long as we all work together and don't pay anything else late and don't make my job harder by paying things late while we're trying to get the negatives off, then we can all win.
See, my whole issue is we don't know this. Nobody talks to us. Nobody tells us this. You know the system. That's why it's important to have you, like people like you on our program, to help educate us. I did not know that. I'm sure a lot of people know it, but that's why knowledge is so important. And that's why I have people like you, so you can come on and give us a little education on it. Because if we're ignorant and we don't know, then they ain't gonna tell us.
Exactly.
So now, quickly, and we're gonna keep talking, how can people reach you? You talked about your credit thing, recovery, you talked about your other, how can people reach you?
So I can give you my contact information to put on your page if that works for you. And I can give people my phone number right now.
You can give them your phone number now, because some people will look on the page, some people, because my thing is to have an opportunity so they can reach out. So you can give them your phone number and you can give them the information, and we'll make sure Did this tag?
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I'm right on 3619 Walnut Street in Harrisburg. My phone number 717-813-6409. If you call, I don't answer, just shoot me a text. I get tons of calls, but 717-813-6409.
Could you
I'm here to
please
help.
say it a little slower? See, you said it so fast. First of all, when you first started saying it, it would took me 2 minutes to find the pen to write the information down. Then I gotta find something to write it on. And you done already gone. Because many times I was gonna buy things, but time I got it was too late.
It was too late.
Could you go slow?
Wonderful, wonderful.
So
I
say
can-
it slow.
I can be reached at 717-813-6409.
Okay, and you're on Walnut Street.
3619 Walnut Street in Harrisburg.
Now, let me ask you this. I have people that listen to this program all over, not just in Harrisburg. So can they reach out to you as well?
They can reach out. When it comes to credit, I can cover all 50 states. When it comes to mortgages, I'm licensed in PA, Maryland, New Jersey, and Florida, but I have colleagues in other states. So yes.
See, I want people to know that because I don't want people to say, oh, we only do Harrisburg, and then they live up the street.
I'm nationwide.
Nationwide. Let me ask you another question. Now, we talked about how to improve your credit. And we also talked about home ownership creates wealth. And I noticed you had a card and you gave things that people need to start to put together so as they prepare a packet to when they decide they want to get it. So what are some of the things that they need? Because see, you assume they all have those things. Now I'm looking at some of these things here, and you can just elaborate. You say copy your driver's license if you have a driver's license, right?
Yes, if you don't have a driver's license, any kind of ID or passport, I definitely say something that's important is your tax returns, because I know there are some people that don't file taxes. And at the end of the day, the income that I would use to qualify you to buy a home would be the income that you report to Uncle Sam. So you would have to file taxes. So,
All right, let's go back to what you just said.
Sure,
See,
sure.
we're gonna get into it here. We're gonna get into nitty gritty. You said something about tax returns, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're saying people have to have tax returns to prove that they have the income?
Tax returns and or W-2s, but yes, you have to prove your income.
Okay. Also, they have to show where the money came from, right?
They do.
Would you explain that to my audience? Because I know people that told me that they wanted to buy houses, but they couldn't prove where they got the down payment.
So monies must be sourced. So when you're going to buy a house, and let's just say you have $10,000 at home and you're safe, I get you pre-approved. I set you up with a realtor. You'll find a house. You're going to contract. At that point, I'm going to request your last 2 months of bank statements. That money has to be in the bank. It has to be seasoned. And when I say seasoned, it means when I look at your last 2 months bank statements, the money had to be already in there. So it had to be at least 60 days because like cash can't be sourced. So I would tell my clients, you have to think ahead, because if that money's under your mattress or in the safe, if you go and put 10,000 in the bank and give me the bank statement, how do I know where that money came from? We don't. So cash is king, but when it comes to lending, it is not. I need that money sourced because I have to explain to my underwriters, and those are the people that are going to approve the loan, where the monies came from. However, if you put the money in today, and then we start in 3 months from now,
Okay.
and I look back 2 months and the money's already in there, guess what? No questions will be asked. As long as it's already in there, I don't care where it came from. Now, there's ways around it as far as, my grandmother gave me a gift. There's some one-offs, but for the most part, your money must be seasoned. And if I may, I'm going to jump back to tax returns real quick because I have a lot of self-employed clients from barbers through contractors. And the first thing their accountant says is to write everything off so they don't have to have a hefty tax bill. So a client comes in, hey, I grossed 85,000 this year. But your net number, that bottom number, I'm going to say line 35, I could be wrong, says $4,000 because you wrote everything off. That's the number I have to use. That bottom number, that net number is what I have to use to qualify. So I don't care if you make 350,000 gross over the year. I'm using that net number. So you have to tell your accountant, hey, I'm trying to buy a house. So you cannot write everything off. I see this every day with my self-employed clients. You cannot write everything off.
And that's very important. See, knowledge is very important. I'm glad that you shared that because I do know people who was going to buy a house and they had the money in the safe and they went and they said, whoop, you can't because we don't know where you got the money from, blah, blah, blah. And you use the good word, seasoned. The money has to be seasoned. And these are things people should know. What else they need? So if they've had bankrupt before, if they have all these things, so they need to have all these, start to put all these things together.
Yes, and what I do, and a lot of other lenders don't, especially on a bank side, is I have people come to me before they're ready and say, listen, I want to buy a house in a year. What do I need to do to put the pieces in place? And we'll have this conversation and we'll sit down and we'll paint the picture, put a plan in place so that they're ready. But, I don't know where else they would go for that. There's no class for that. The first time home buyers program will help you with that. But, I implore people to do some research, ask around, ask the right people, and take a class. If it's something, this is out of your realm you've never done before, first time home buyers class is there for a reason. And it does answer a lot of questions and will take a lot of the mystery out of the home buying process.
Explain to me, I've heard this before, so I'm just going to throw some words out and I'd like for you to explain them. House rich, cash poor. What does that mean?
So so just because I can get you approved, just for conversation, so you come in, I look at your W-2s, I look at your credit. On paper, you can afford a $300,000 house on paper. That doesn't mean you have to get it. Because that means all of your income that's coming in, you're using to pay your mortgage, and then what? Then you can't sustain your normal way of life. You can't go out to eat, and it's like all of my money is going to my house. I have a nice big fancy house. However, I'm eating ramen every night because I can't do anything. Mm-hmm. So I try to tell people, I don't care if you can afford this on paper. What's comfortable for you? Because guess what? On the first of the month, every month, you're making this payment, not me. So what's comfortable for you? Because at the end of the day, you still want to live your life. You still want to go to the movies or take your kids out. You still have to have a life. So you don't want to live beyond your means and have the nice house on the block, but you can't afford to leave it.
So I was going to go to my next, affordable. And you kind of articulated affordable. And so that's how you tied it in, saying it's one thing that you can pay the mortgage. It's another thing that the things that go with it, whether it's insurance, whether it's the taxes, would you, those are the other things they need to calculate in it?
So yes and no, I do that for them. Okay. So I'd say 90% of my mortgages, my clients will escrow. And what I mean by escrow is that monthly payment they're making will include your principal, interest, tax, and insurance. So you make that payment, you don't have to worry about tax at the end of the year, because I've seen situations where people pay their mortgage every month and tax went behind. And if your taxes go behind for a couple of years, you know what happens, right? They take your house. So especially when it comes to FHA and a lot of the conventional loans I do, I make sure that the payments everything's escrowed, so we leave nothing to chance. You pay this monthly payment, it covers everything. Now you also have to make sure that you can afford your utilities, your electric, your water, your gas. But yeah, tax and insurance we try to put into the mortgage so you don't forget about it.
So The other word is foreclosure. So what does foreclosure mean?
Foreclosure means that you defaulted on your payments and the bank's taking your house. So what happens is you go a month behind and, I want to catch up, I'm gonna get a second job or so on and so forth. You go 2 months. When you hit 90 days, 3 months, you hit 90 days, you get what's called an Act 91 letter, and it's the notice of intent to foreclose. Very bad. You don't want that because it all goes downhill from there. The bank will start the process of taking your home, then they'll put it up for sale, and then you'll have people bidding on your home. So foreclosure is very bad. Unfortunately, I think we're going to start seeing some here soon. But it's a bad thing. It means you did not pay your mortgage and the bank's coming after your house. It's worst case scenario.
I mean, traditionally, people of color have had some very negative experiences with banks, mortgage companies who have taken advantage of them. So what you're saying to me is that one of the most important things is that they need to do research. Is that what you're?
Yes, do the research and ask questions. I was going to say ask the right questions, but you might not know what the right questions are. You want to work with a team that's going to have your best interests at heart, and that's hard to find. But fortunately, in Harrisburg, you have some nice African American realtors that are seasoned, well versed, and you have to have somebody on your team that cares about you and not just a paycheck. There's a ton of realtors and lenders, and the goal is let's get Mr. Utley in the house, and I'm gonna get paid. And yes, we're here to get paid because we have bills, but we're also here to help people achieve their dreams and help people accomplish a goal. And you have to be able to explain through it. What happened to people years ago was the bank just never explained anything. They hid stuff in the fine print, and it made it very easy to foreclose and take because we didn't understand what we were signing. We were just so happy to get a house if we were approved. And those days are over. It's there. We just have to look. We have to read it, and we have to put the right team in place. And that's talking to seasoned professional that's going to have your best interest at heart.
I'm glad that you brought up. There's so many realtors out there, many of them that are my friends, and I know that they would do everything they can to help you to get in a house. But at the same time, what he just said, you got to take some responsibility as well. And that means save up, get that credit score, and pay your bills on time. So if you ain't paid a bill for 2 years, don't look to buy a house maybe for another 2 years until you pay up your bills. What are some of the, and I did some research, and I did some research because I knew you were coming on here, and I looked up some of the obstacles staying in the way of home ownership for the poor,
Okay.
for people. Now, when I bring up the 2 words, I'll bring up 2 other sentences and you can respond to them. I'm a big component, and I always talk about lack of affordable housing. And that's a big issue. Would you agree?
Yes, I would definitely agree. There is a lack of affordable housing. I can agree with that. Yes. But I also think that something should be done about it. That would come from your state level, county level.
Right.
Have houses that your low to medium income can maybe get first dibs at. I mean, there are some HUD programs where a foreclosure will come out, comes back on the market for sale, and a homeowner has first dibs for like the first 10 or 15 days. But yes, we need programs out here that are catered towards that, or else the numbers are going to stay low.
Thank you. And I'm going to throw my little pitch in there. That's why it's important to make sure that elected official has your vested interest. That's why you got to make sure that mayor or that county commissioner or whoever is looking out for your interests and saying, hey, I see all these nice skyscrapers. I see all these nice restaurants, but where can we live? And I think that's very important. So also I want to ask you another word, personal economic factor. You think that's a very important thing in terms of how to get home ownership?
Yes, yes, I do. And well, before I even jump to that, so your last point, I think there should be incentive for builders and real estate developers to build and renovate affordable housing. And right now, I don't see it.
Okay.
So as a, I'm a real estate entrepreneur and I do a lot of rehabs and flips. And I don't see any programs out there. At the end of the day, you got somebody trying to make money. I can renovate a house and sell it for 130 or for 330. There has to be some incentive for people to do the 130s, because if not, they're going to do the 330s where there's a higher profit.
I do understand that. And the other thing is, down payment is very important.
Down payment is vital. Yes, 100%. And there are some down payment assistance programs through Dauphin County, through PHFA. So, that is something that you can get help on, and it's need based and goes off of income. But it's available. We just got to go out there and get it. But it is available.
Okay, time is flying here, so I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes to tell my audience what you think is so important that you want to leave them with.
Again, thank you for the time today, Mr. Utley. But yeah, what I want to leave you guys with is homeownership is vital, it's important, and it is the first step to wealth. And I just want us to take it more serious. We say we want it and it's there, but there's a gap in wanting it and going to get it. And that gap is discipline. That gap is, let's say, if I'm really serious about it, I'm going to save some money. I'm going to take care of my credit. So the infrastructure's there. I'm here to help. I just need you to do your part. That's it. I'll bring you to the promised land. I'll take you to the finish line. Just you do your part. I'll do the rest.
Well, I think that what you brought to the audience is very important. And I'd also thank you, because one of the things I want to do is have people like us tell our stories and share their experiences with us and to help us along the way. Because if we don't tell our stories along the way with the knowledge, then shame on us. Like, you may have helped somebody now, or you could have helped somebody before about the whole balloon mortgage thing, because they did not know. But not only they did not know, you did not know, and you learned from that. So before I close up, would you please give everybody your information again?
Yes, so I can be reached. My phone number is 717-813-6409. And my office is located at 3619 Walnut Street in Harrisburg, Suite 2. And I would love to help anybody. That's what I'm here for. And please give me a call, shoot me a text, and let's connect.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm going to leave my audience with this. History, history, history. If you don't know where you came from, you may not know where you're going. And I think we owe it to our young people to share with them that there's so much rich history in who we are. And I think if we do that, I think that'll help their personal development. Because I hear so many kids say, I ain't gonna be, but we have such a history and wealth of who we are as a people. But if we keep waiting on everybody to tell our story, then shame on us. Because as I said when I first came on, it bothered me the other day when I talked to a group of people and they had no idea how they got to where they are. They didn't even know they were trailblazers. And maybe it's our fault. And maybe we should take a responsibility to tell them how they got to where they are today. So thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. And don't forget, get out there and register to vote, because this is going to be one of the most important elections. I know we say it all the time. This is going to be a very important election. And if we sit on our hands and don't be crying, woe me. And I think we learned some of that. And how do I mean that by history? Kept telling people, whoever become president decides who's going to be on the Supreme Court. And we said, well, you saw what happened. The deck is stacked, and it's going to take years and years to correct that. So that's history. So we going to make sure we ain't going to let history repeat itself again. So good evening, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for joining the Richard Utley Show on The Voice 17104. We will be here on The Voice 17104 every first and third Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Once again, thanks for viewing. Remember to visit us on Facebook at Richard Utley, and we welcome your questions,